Thank you. And I just wanted to start by saying that we all appreciate everyone making an hour out of their weekend to be at the, the event. I'll just be briefly speaking about what SEAL is, as well as how you may get involved, and after that, I'll hand it back over to Eliana um, for the actual event. So uh, as and many of you may, as it is otherwise, be involved in SEAL, but SEAL stands for the Social Equity Action Lab, and it's a national think tank with an aim to really try and drive impactful health policy research and advocacy. We do this by working with students, researchers, as well as policymakers, and we are focused on a range of different issues, most notably and most recently on issues around global health, mental health, and broader healthcare system care delivery. Um, we have also, over the last year, been focused on working with local and state electoral candidates to actually work with them on their own races and making and helping them actually have broadly effective and progressive healthcare policies as well. And we lastly host events much like this one, where we have leading scholars, academics, and implementation experts across the world speaking with our base of youth, ranging from high school and undergraduate students all the way up to medical graduate students, as well as residents. So with all of that, we are once again extremely excited to have all of you here. I expect that all of us will learn a lot from Eliana, who has immense expertise in hosting.
Um, Thank you, Bob, for that introduction. I really appreciate that. So yeah, without further ado, let me go on to the next slide here. So a little bit about me. My name is Eliana. I'm an incoming medical student at Harvard. Very, very excited to be moving to Boston and starting in my dream school. But I credit a lot of my advocacy work to helping me get there. So, as I mentioned in the email that I sent to you guys, I've been a part of advocacy work at the local, state, and national levels. So, at the local level, I was really involved with Surfrider, or rather the Surfrider Foundation. And they helped me a lot with advocating and passing bylaws regarding public health and plastic pollution reduction in my hometown. And then I also participated in national advocacy with them in terms of advocating for bills related to climate change, also some public health bills as well. Um, and my advocacy work with them really inspired me to get involved in the state level as well. So I ended up joining the Next Gen Climate and Health Ambassador Program during my gap year, where I learned more about policy work and advocacy work, and then networked with other students and med students in the healthcare field who were also interested in climate and health. And together we started a state level climate and health advocacy day where we were able to get co-sponsorships on bills related to environmental justice, public health, etc. And then also garner some support for a major climate omnibus bill. And then eventually our efforts led us to be awarded with a Global Health and Peace Award, which we were very grateful to receive from the Greater Boston chapter of Physicians for Social Responsibility. So I've learned a lot through these experiences. I'm by no means an expert, but I feel like I do have some insights to share that could be helpful to all of you. Um, I will say that if you are doing an advocacy day for the first time or organizing one yourself for the first time, I definitely recommend doing a state level one first, just because uh, the national level is obviously a little bit more logistics to consider. But I think the state level is definitely doable, and that's where my kind of more experiences is tailored to as well. So I tailored this whole presentation to be more focused on how to run a state level advocacy day. So here's kind of a rough outline of what we're going to talk about. The first being identifying a cause and team of people who are going to help you organize. This is a very logistic intensive activity, so getting a good core group team is essential to ensuring success. And then moving on, we'll talk about timeline, planning, and then I'll give you an example of how I kind of organize my advocacy day, and I'll give you sort of some sample sides of how I kind of broke down the schedule. And then we'll wrap it up with a Q&A. You guys submitted really great questions through the event registration form, so I included a bunch of commonly asked questions that I'll kind of go through one by one. Okay, identifying a cause and team. On the left here, you'll see a picture of my team for my recent advocacy day. My sister, who's also on this call, Elizabeth, she's pictured there with the gavel. And there, right on the far left, is our state legislator for our area, Mark Sylvia. Shout out to him, wonderful person. So there are a lot of people who inspired me to get into advocacy work, and one of them being Dr. Arthur Kellerman. I learned about him during my bioethics class in college. We watched a little documentary about him, and I like to share his story because I think that his work can be really inspiring for people who are in the medical field, especially, but also for anyone who just wants to share their lived experiences with legislators, because those experiences, no one can take those away from you, and they are really impactful in helping connect with policymakers on a more human level. So just to kind of talk more about him, so he was an emergency room doc in Tennessee at a public hospital where he was noticing that a lot of patients from the private hospital up the street were being dumped to his ER because the patients weren't able to afford medical bills or had outstanding medical bills. And so he gives the example in this documentary of a 19-year-old who was in critical condition, who was dumped from the private hospital to his ER, and he wasn't stabilized by the previous physicians whatsoever. So he started to notice that all of these patients who had been dumped had yellow wristbands, and he knew these weren't his patients because at his hospital they had blue wristbands. So he decided enough is enough. I'm going to collect a bunch of yellow wristbands throughout the course of 90 days. He recruited everyone at the ER to help him. And then he took a huge bag of those wristbands and went to Congress and testified in support of the MTAL legislation, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. And basically, that has, because he testified and because he was so convincing, they passed that legislation, which now prevents patient dumping. So if you go to an emergency room, no matter your ability to pay, you will receive the care that you need. And so to me, that was a really impactful story. And I think it just goes to show that, you all have very special and unique experiences that can really make a difference. So I hope that you keep this in mind as you organize your advocacy day and really bring these stories and help be the voice for not only yourself, but your community as well. Okay, so again, going back to kind of a little bit more logistics wise, I definitely recommend that once you identify a cause that you're passionate about and want to pursue, find like-minded people who are going to help you organize the event and handle a lot of the logistics. And hopefully these people are just as passionate about you about this cause and are excited to contribute. I recommend definitely getting a core group of maybe like 3 to 4 people who you can kind of divvy up tasks between. And so as you get this group together and as you start researching these different causes, I have a few organizations here that I recommend you look into. I am a little bit more, I have more experience in the healthcare field, so all of these organizations are more health related. But by all means, if you are not in the healthcare field, feel free to do your own research on other organizations. All of like the organizational and logistics things I will go through later in the presentation still apply to any kind of advocacy days, not just the healthcare related ones. So just keep that in mind. So the first one I wanted to talk about is GBPSR. I mentioned that I worked with them for the Climate and Health Advocacy Day. They also now run a nuclear prevention advocacy day as well. So if you are in Massachusetts and you'd like to get involved in either one, you're more than welcome to join us. Or if you're in another state, we are all happy to chat if you're interested in organizing your own advocacy days that are related to either of those causes. So I'll link my email at the end of the presentation, but more than happy to chat about that and happy to connect you with people who are working in this similar realm. Okay, moving on. The Surfrider Foundation, I mentioned that I worked with them as well. They do have national advocacy days. They are a national organization, but they have a lot of local chapters as well. And so you could reach out to your local chapter and just say, hey, I'm interested in organizing a state advocacy day. Could you kind of point me in the right direction in terms of what bills are popular in the state or which ones have the most momentum? So yeah, that's another great organization to get involved with. And they have a lot of infrastructure in terms of trainings and policy resources, things like that. So highly recommend them as well. The third is Partners in Health. If you are interested in global and public health, this is a really, really great one. My sister Elizabeth, who I mentioned, is on the call. She's actually heading to DC in August to advocate with Partners in Health. So they are very, very plugged into all that's going on in the healthcare field in terms of, the cuts to global health funding, cuts to Medicaid. So if that's of interest to you, definitely look into them as well. Moving on, the Massachusetts Academy of Family Physicians is another great organization. I advocated with them actually this past May. They have a very well-established advocacy day, so I just participated. But they are working on several pieces of legislation for strengthening primary care. So, I know we have a lot of med students here, a lot of pre-med students. I'm sure you all know that primary care definitely needs a lot of advocacy work. So this organization is great if you are in Mass and you want to participate with them. But again, they're happy to collaborate with people across the country. I know that they're currently collaborating with people in different states who are looking to propose their own pieces of legislation related to primary care strengthening. So that's another one you could look into. I'm happy to try to connect you with people as well if that's something you're interested in. And lastly, the Breast Cancer Prevention Partners Organization. This is a really great one that I recently learned about. I haven't worked with them specifically, but I listened to a presentation by a woman who works with them. And so essentially, they're working right now on tackling the issue of toxic IV bags and tubing, which I had no idea this was such an issue. But I guess a lot of IV bags and tubing have very toxic chemicals and plastics that often will leach into the medicine that you're trying to give patients. So this is a up and coming issue that people are tackling now. And I think this is one also that is pretty nonpartisan. I think a lot of people can agree they don't want toxic chemicals in their medications. So if that's something you're interested in as well, feel free to search them up on Google. Again, happy to connect you with, or try to connect you at least with people across all of these organizations. But here are just a few resources that you can start to look into. Okay, timeline and planning. So I don't know how much you guys know about kind of state legislative processes, but the basic is that across the state, each state legislator, or sorry, across the country, each state legislature will have a different time frame for their legislative sessions. And during these sessions, legislators are actively debating, discussing, and voting on different bills. And so you kind of want to pinpoint when that time frame is, and then you want to pinpoint next when are the formal sessions. So during these formal sessions are when people are actively voting on these bills and co-sponsoring, whereas the informal sessions are generally when there's kind of like just other committee activities that they're doing, not necessarily even related to legislation. So um, if you can, try to visit this link and see when exactly your legislative session is starting and ending in your state. This map kind of shows you the variability in terms of when states are in session or not in session. You can see in red, those are the ones that are in recess, which is just a pause in the legislative session. The blue ones are in session. The yellow are special sessions, which are kind of like special topic sessions. And seems like no states are in that now. And then the ones in gray are completely out of session. So they're not discussing bills at all. But yeah, I generally recommend that you try to schedule your advocacy day as early on in the legislative session as you can, just because, this is a fresh new start for legislators. They're looking for bills to sponsor and to work on. So the earlier the better. In my experience, sometimes that's tough to coordinate. And so there have been times where we scheduled an advocacy day right before the formal session ended, and that's okay too. We were able to garner some support for bills as well during that time. But just a heads up. Okay, so here's some kind of milestones that I recommend that you hit. So in terms of thinking of a date, I generally recommend that you give yourself 4 to 5 months to plan. So during this time frame, you'll identify a cause, a team. You can make people co-chairs. It sounds a little bit more official to help you organize the event. And then I highly recommend that you also schedule a meeting time, whether it's bi-weekly or monthly, just to make sure that things are not falling through the cracks and people are staying on task. Next, pick a date for the event. Like I said, try to look up those dates of when the legislative sessions are happening and do it as early as possible. Additionally, you should also plan an advocacy day training, which it can be on Zoom. If you can do it in person, that's great, but by no means necessary. And I recommend doing that 1 to 2 weeks out from your event. So that gives people some time to look through the bills more, meet with their teams, kind of figure out what they're doing in terms of the meeting structures. And then moving on, identifying bills to advocate for. So um, with your team, you'll hopefully research some bills. What I did with my team is I would look at a ton of different local organizations in my state and see what legislative priorities that they were publishing on their websites. And the more research you'll do, you'll find that a lot of those bills overlap. So we tried to find which bills had the most sponsorships, which bills had the most momentum, and tried to figure out which ones aligned most with the values of our advocacy day. And I generally say, 3 to 4 bills, maybe five at most is good. I think we did like 6 this past year, and it was kind of a lot. Um, but I think yeah, like 3 to 4 is generally pretty good. And then yeah, I also recommend meeting with local organizations too to kind of learn more about why they are passionate about particular bills, why they want to see certain bills pass, because that'll give you some more insight to the nuances of the bill as well. I also linked this beginner's guide through the maze of Massachusetts lawmaking. Again, you should look up the specific procedures for the way bills are passed in your state because I think it varies from state to state. In Massachusetts, in particular, it's a little bit complex, but the basics of it generally involve once a bill is filed, it gets referred to a committee where it goes through some hearings and then some back and forth and readings, but then eventually, hopefully, that bill gets referred to the House and Senate, where it'll hopefully be voted on and then passed. So yeah, just something to keep in mind as well. Creating an event website in Gmail. So I highly recommend also using a free website maker like Weebly. That's what I used to create an event website. This will allow you to have a place to publish your legislative priorities, the event details, and sign up. And I also linked my Climate and Health Day website here, as well as the Mass AFP website for their Advocacy Day as well, for reference. And then I also recommend creating a Gmail account because this will just help you kind of divert all of the emails because I know like inboxes can be flooded pretty quickly. So I think this is a great way to kind of help compartmentalize all of the different activities you're working on. Okay, next, recruit participants. So the next thing would be to create an event registration form. I like Google Forms, and I actually again linked the Google form that we shared with people for my Advocacy Day event right here. Anything underlined, by the way, is a hyperlink. And then you can post that on your website, start recruiting people as soon as you finalize your priorities. And then I would also send that Google form to undergrad and grad email lists and other local organizations. I also cold emailed people who were, for example, physicians who are working on climate and health related activities. And so I was able to recruit a bunch of people that way as well. And I also shared on LinkedIn, places like that, social media. Next, once we get a good number of participants, I would say, for your first Advocacy Day event, I would shoot for like 15. I think that's around what we got for the first 2 years that I ran mine. And then this past year, we actually got 30 people to sign up, which was really awesome. But once you do have a good group of people, you can split them into teams. I suggest, 3 to 6 people each for each team, and then assign them based on who is a constituent of which legislator. So I'll give you an example. Like for my team this past year, so me and my sister were both from the same area, obviously. So we set up two meetings with legislators that were from our area in the morning, and then we combined with another two people. So it was the same four people going through all the meetings throughout the day. And then for the other two people who were both from, I think it was Quincy, I want to say, we set up meetings with their legislators for the afternoon. And so, obviously legislators care most about the people who are voting for them. So definitely try to keep as many constituents together as possible. Uh, and then, it's generally good to have like a team captor, team leader for each of your teams who can kind of give an intro to the group and then help guide the conversation. And then ideally, these team captains will also help you um, schedule meetings with legislators as well, because the more number of people who sign up for the event, that becomes a very big task to try to schedule meetings for everybody. So ideally, you try to divert these tasks as much as possible and have team captains help you. And for each team captain, I recommend emailing 2 to 3 weeks before meetings and requesting maybe 6 to 7 meetings with 6 to 7 legislators, and then shoot to have 3 to 4 meetings. So yeah, like this past year, I reached out to I think like 7 legislators for my team, and I think we secured four after that. So not everybody responds. It's unfortunate, and you can try to follow up with them. Definitely try, but just keep in mind that you should try to reach out to a few more people than you need. Okay. In terms of reaching out to legislators, if you visit your state legislator website, you can see that they have a lot of information for each representative. So Senator Stone Cream here, you can see her email, her room number, the bills that she co-sponsored, and her biography. So this is really helpful, and I urge you to continue to refer to your state legislator website. Okay, and then this is just like a email template that I had shared with my team. When you're reaching out to legislators, you can just ask them for a 20 to 30-minute meeting on this proposed date at this proposed time. Mention who is going to be there. If you are, or I would say that if you are reaching out to legislators, I would also include the constituents at the very top, because you want to make sure that they know that these are people who are voting for you. Um, and then moving on from that, just give a little spiel about what your event is. What are the major themes? What are you trying to convey? And then offer them to send an electronic calendar invitation, things like that. So hopefully this is helpful. Feel free to just copy and paste and use this. Okay, next thing, the Advocacy Day Zoom training. So this is the Zoom event that you will hold 1 to 2 weeks before your Advocacy Day. So I put an example slideshow here, and I'll share these slides with you guys. But essentially, you want to kind of walk people through what the event is going to look like, what are the logistics, who is on what team, and then meeting discussions. So this is kind of how I broke down my slideshow. So we start out with chair intros. Who are you? What is the purpose of the Advocacy Day event? Where are you meeting? Are you going to have lunch together? How long are the meetings? Provide a list of teams. And if you have finalized your meeting schedule for each team, you can share it during this time as well. And then in terms of meeting discussions, I like to tell people and use the example of people like Arthur Kellerman, and urge them to really share their stories, and not be so concerned about emphasizing stats and research and things like that, because I think stories tend to be the most compelling. You can definitely sprinkle in stats in there and research to back up your claims, but try to really relate to policymakers on a human level and share the stories from your community. Um, and then during this training, you'll also review each bill with the participants, try to keep it high level, emphasize the major themes. You don't have to be an expert on the bills. You just kind of need to know the gist of it and why they're important. And then for teams and especially team captains, it's good to research which bills the legislators have already co-sponsored. So, for example, we met with Senator Keenan this past year. He had co-sponsored two of our bills already. So we started the meeting by saying, Senator Keenan, thank you so much for already co-sponsoring two of our bills. We have a few other similar bills that we'd love to get your support on for X, Y, Z reasons. And that kind of, it's a good little warm up for getting them interested in your work. And then lastly, I share a little template for thank you notes that you want to send after the event. And I'll show you guys a template of that later in the presentation. Okay, sample event breakdown. So this is an example slide that I included in my Advocacy Day training presentation. So I told people this was obviously, an event where a lot of physicians were attending. So I told them to wear their white coats. We had an optional breakfast at a coffee house right across the street at 8:30. And then I told them they can walk over to the State House around 9 a.m. to take photos. And then I told them each group will have 4 to 5 meetings throughout the day from 9 to 5. And I didn't have my meeting schedule finalized for this yet. I sent it a few days later, but I just gave people, a general range to expect when meetings were. And then we also reserved a room at a local restaurant for lunch. So that's a fun little thing to do and kind of like a fun networking event too. And then for meeting format, we generally told people to keep it to 20 to 30 minutes, go through introductions, discuss each bill. Ideally, each person will pick one to two bills to discuss for around 3 to 5 minutes. And then you can finish it up with big takeaways and any questions that the staffer or legislator that you're meeting with might have. And then lastly, leave legislators or staff with a bill handout. I also linked an example right there. Would keep this very brief, try to summarize the bills as much as possible. And what I did is I made my margins very, very small, so everything just fit on one page. I think it makes it a little bit easier to digest. Okay, and here's a sample meeting schedule. So this is an example of the schedule that I shared with my team. I included my contact info, all the team name members, and then which legislator we were reaching out to, which bills did they co-sponsor already, meeting time, meeting place, and which participants are constituents. So this is a good thing to kind of keep track of. And then pro tip, I would highly recommend that after your Advocacy Day training. So that's the Zoom event you'll have 1 to 2 weeks before the actual event. I recommend team captains meet with their teams separately and kind of discuss how you guys are going to conduct the meeting. What's the flow going to be? Who's going to discuss which bills? What issues does each legislator care about most? And who's taking meeting notes? Definitely really good to have one person kind of taking note of which bills the legislator was more keen on supporting, and which bills you might want to follow up with them later about. This is an example of the thank you notes that I mentioned. It'd be ideal if the team captains send this after the event, but if they're busy, someone else can do it. Just make sure to coordinate this. But yeah, this is just a nice touch at the end to do. So I generally like to include maybe some specific things that we discussed during the meeting, and other follow-ups, like if a legislator expressed some interest in co-sponsoring a bill but wanted to look more into it, kind of touch on that and then let them know that you're able to answer any questions moving forward and you're looking forward to working with them. Again, feel free to copy and paste this as well. Um, Other post-event activities. So after your really successful event, host a debrief session with your event chairs and team captains to discuss how the event went, what went wrong, what went well, and then keep track of bill progress and whether legislators co-sponsored bills by checking your state legislator website. If you click on any bill, you can find out which phase it's at. Is it at the committee level? Is it being voted on? So make sure to keep track of that as well. And see if legislators are co-sponsoring it. You can actually see when a legislator co-sponsored something. So if they express interest in one of the bills, you can definitely follow up with them, check in, ask if they're still looking to co-sponsor that. And then moving on, encourage participants to testify at hearings for bills or submit written testimony. So after your event, there might be bills that are still at the committee level, and they will host different hearings where the public can come in and speak about the bills and why they're important. Or if they can't make it, they can also submit the written testimony. So try to keep track of that on your state legislature website as well, and then share with your participants and try to coordinate some that might be able to attend those as well because this is a great event to do once a year, but then you want to have some follow-ups that you can do throughout the year as well. And this is a great thing to get involved with as well. And yeah, this is again like what Dr. Arthur Kellerman did as well. And then the last thing is consider creating a newsletter to keep event participants engaged in your cause all year round. This is an example of ours. We have a great team who is helping us put this together each month, and it just kind of keeps people updated on what's going on in the climate and health movement, any updates on bills, and then maybe volunteer or other activities that people can get involved in. Okay, I'm gonna check the time really quick. Yeah, we're doing okay. So an FAQ. So these are basically a lot of the questions that you guys submitted on the Google form. So I really thank you for submitting some thoughtful questions. But I did see some similar themes popping up, so I just wanted to go through these really quick, and then we'll leave some room for questions at the end. But the first one was, how do you create a budget and schedule when organizing an advocacy day? So the good news is that, at least for mine, I didn't need any money. I did this all, everybody did it for free. Everybody did it out of the kindness of their heart. They were volunteering. So unless you are, for example, the next question, somebody asked about organizing in a state like California. So if you are in a very large state like California and you anticipate that there would be maybe transportation costs involved and hotel costs involved in getting to the state house in person, you could, put together a budget or a fundraising idea to help make that happen. But you could also just do things on Zoom and schedule meetings over Zoom. So that's something to consider as well. Obviously, going in person is way more fun, and then you get to see the state house. But know that this is definitely an option that you can consider. Um, Moving on, what suggestions do you have on making an advocacy day something bipartisan in a hyper-polarized climate? Yeah, isn't this the age-old question? So I would say that for some legislation, like I mentioned, the toxic IV in tubes campaign, that I think is inherently more bipartisan, just because I think everybody can get behind banning toxic chemicals. Um, for legislation that isn't so bipartisan, I would say, again, if you're meeting with a legislator that is maybe a little bit more resistant or maybe doesn't, fully align with what you're advocating for, I think just speaking to them respectfully and trying to offer up your story as another experience that they can maybe empathize with, that's very valuable. And I think that, having these conversations and by hosting days like this, you build relationships with legislators. So I think that's a really, really good way to kind of start to, chip away at this issue a little bit at a time. And yeah, just always stay respectful, always just try to relate to them on a human and personal level. And I think that honestly goes a long way. And then next, how can we build long-term relationships with elected officials? Definitely by organizing an advocacy day annually. I think that really helps. I mean, we have met with the same legislators for going on 3 years now, and we're getting to know them really well. I think that every year the ones who are a little bit more resistant at first are softening up. So yeah, I know it's a long process, but staying persistent and meeting annually definitely does help. I'll also say that in my personal experience, getting involved at the local level actually opened me up to really great connections with legislators too. Um, I mentioned the work that I did with Surfrider. So when I was working with my local sustainability committee to help pass bylaws, I was getting to know these people very well. And then about a year ago, my state representative, who was just elected, he was looking for legislative aid, and someone on the sustainability committee actually recommended my name. And I was like, wow, I appreciate that, but I'm going to med school, so I can't do that. But after that, we stayed in touch, and I actually scheduled a meeting with him, and we talked about different topics and other organizations that I was working with, trying to advocate for different things there as well. But anyway, point being, we have stayed in touch. We are working together on the climate and health advocacy work as well. So you never know, like what you could get involved in at the local level and then end up meeting with them at the state level as well. So there's some fun connections like that can happen. Um, how can you overcome setbacks and turning policies into reality? What mistakes have you made, if any, and would you do anything differently? So in terms of setbacks, yeah, there's plenty of setbacks. You're not going to get everyone to co-sponsor, but you can definitely, keep trying and staying persistent. Like I said, legislators have definitely softened up over the years with us, and we have been garnering more and more on support. Um, but another example would be like the climate omnibus bill that we wanted to pass. So it did end up passing, but by the time it passed, it had gone through so many revisions that it became a lot more diluted than we had hoped. And so we tried to identify which parts of the bill were taken out that we still believed in. And so we continue to advocate for those pieces of legislation today. And, it's still a work in progress, but again, advocacy work and activism always is. So definitely just stay persistent with it. And in terms of anything that I would do differently, I would say that, it becomes a little difficult to organize events like this if you don't have really good communication with your team and your co-chairs. So I definitely wish that I would have started meeting with them more often, much earlier on, because I think that kind of, like I said, helps keep people on track. If someone isn't able to do something, you can coordinate how to get that done. So yeah, definitely recommend that. And then how do you recruit physicians, students, and other allies to participate? And what makes for an effective handout to bring to lawmakers? So I kind of touched on the recruitment already, but yeah, I definitely recommend just cold
Dude,
emailing people.
they either
Um,
started 25 minutes ago or they started 15 minutes. I will make it. Use this as your warm up.
Sorry, Tej. Um, so yeah, I definitely recommend just cold emailing people,
Not let go.
trying to learn more about people who are in the field that you're already trying to get into. And you'll be surprised by how many people are excited to participate in an advocacy day. And then in terms of an effective handout to bring to lawmakers, so yeah, I kind of mentioned this already, and I linked the handout that I created. But I definitely recommend making it a one pager, just few bullet points, talk about each bill. And then also you can email it in your thank you notes as well, just so they have a second copy. For a young person who wants to make a difference but isn't sure where to start, where should they look to for guidance? So Bob and Tasia already touched on this, but SEAL is a really great organization. I really enjoyed working with them so far, and they were able to help me launch this great event. And then I also highly encourage you guys to apply to the Gen Z Agenda Changemaker Fellowship. This is an organization that I founded with my sister, Elizabeth. And so essentially, we're kind of similar to SEAL in that we hold monthly guest speaker events, some from various fields. But we also offer training sessions, for example, in public speaking, op-ed writing, resume building, things like that. And then you'll join a cohort of other students who are interested in the same work as you or trying to make an impact in their local communities. And it's a really great networking program for people, and they're able to kind of bounce ideas back and forth and give each other feedback. So we've really enjoyed it. We did it this past year, and this will be our second year doing it. So if you're interested, apply by July 31st, and we look forward to hopefully getting your application. Thank you so much for listening to this very long presentation. I'm happy to take any other questions you guys have and elaborate on anything more. So just let me know.
Awesome. And if I just might briefly add, this was extremely good. So thank you so much, Eliana. Obviously, of course, myself learned much of. I'm sure the audience did as well. And I think really our goal is to try and support any of you all who are interested in uh, having these opportunities to actually engage with policymakers. So, as you will see, once you start working more with either SEAL and or strategy, much of the emphasis is on how do we examine issues that are actually of deep, great imports, either from a health care setting or in other ways, and actually then use that to form the basis of efforts that we are actually trying to broadly mobilize others on. So really, this is all in line with the spirit of our org, and I look forward to hearing from all of you on any additional questions that you have here as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Bob. I see that Sarah sent a question to me. Where do you find like-minded people? How do you promote your cause to gather people? So yeah, I mean, this is going to vary based on your situation, but I would say, Sarah, I know you're in college. So I know we had talked about you and I a maternal health type of advocacy day. So I would say, maybe pre-med clubs are a good place to start, kind of see maybe if there's any interest there. If you're looking for physicians to join, I would recommend just looking up even medical schools, pages where they have researchers listed, and you could probably find researchers who are doing specific work in maternal health as well. And then, like I said, just cold email them. A lot of people are very interested in getting involved in advocacy work, as long as they don't have to do the organizing. So, um, yeah, definitely reach out to everyone you can. There's also, yeah, especially in Boston, I feel like there's so many maternal health organizations. I would literally just Google them and try to set up initial meetings with them and learn more about their work. And then hopefully they can get you into contact with people who are hopefully, already doing some policy work in the realm of the work that you want to do. But if not, they can at least connect you with the right resources. So I know that's not like a super straightforward answer, but Sarah, you and I can talk offline more specifically about how we can go about that, and I'll try to do some research on that as well. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. I don't see any other questions. Feel free
Something
to.
also that I was wondering would be, you have obviously worked on and helped get a number of different reps to sponsor or co-sponsor different bills. Something that I was interested in asking is, are all of these bills that you specifically helped to write up and draft, or is it more so that you will find existing bills that maybe others have been working on and have already proposed, and you basically then try and bring those bills to the attention of those who may otherwise not have much knowledge about it?
Yeah, that's a good question, Bob. Yeah, so all of the bills that I've personally advocated for at the state level were all bills that already exist, and most of them are somewhere further along in the legislative process, and that's kind of partially why we chose them because we were hoping to get bills that already had some momentum behind them for good reasons too, and we found those bills by researching local orgs in Massachusetts specifically, who were all like dealing with climate and health issues. And so they would publish all their legislative priorities on the websites that they had. And we would basically just look for overlap and see which bills were ones that all of these organizations were prioritizing. And then, there's so many that you can choose from. But then we would discuss within our co-chair group and just discuss which ones seemed the most important to us and decided to and voted on them from there. So yeah, you can definitely work with legislators to propose bills as well. I personally haven't done that, so I can't speak to it. But I have proposed bills at the local level. And so I mentioned the two bylaws that I worked on. That I think, at the local level, if you're, looking to file a completely new bill, I think the local level is a little bit easier to kind of dip your toes in the water, which is what I did. And again, though, like, it's hard for someone who hasn't been involved in policy work before to kind of get up and just file a bill and create the language for that bill. So I specifically worked with the Surfrider Foundation, specifically with Dr. Alex Ty, who does all of his policy and volunteer work on a voluntary basis. And he's very, very knowledgeable about the policy process. And he was able to help guide me as I was drafting bylaw language for my town. So I think a lot of people, we apply to all these like internships and organizations to work with, but really you can just work with local organizations or reach out to them and see how you can be helpful in pushing a lot of their legislative priorities forward. And yeah, I mean, I gained some really great mentorship through that, so I highly recommend that you guys reach out to any organizations that you feel like align with your interests.
Great. Thank you, Eliana. I'll just ask one more brief question, and then we'll see if others also uh, have any, which is, are there any examples of issues that you've seen are of interest to reps that don't inherently need them to actually increase spending? And I ask this especially, in the context of the fact that more and more state houses are focused on trying to lower their spending, and I've at least seen laws like those that might, as an example, help to relax barriers from health insurers and other entities that are more on the regulatory angle of things and don't inherently need the state house to actually increase spending on their own accord. So just wanted to ask, like, are the issues that you've worked on those that actually need spending, or do you often work on other such issues?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's a problem that we were running into. Some of the bills that we've advocated for in the past definitely require some increase in spending. But we noticed that those weren't garnering as much support as we anticipated. So we tried to shift our focus a little bit, and we still had, a lot of climate related bills, but we also included some bills, for example, related to PFAS. Everyone can agree that PFAS is bad, that regulating chemicals like that is a really good idea. And so I will say like those bills were much easier to get support for. So yeah, it's worth noting that those, like you mentioned, those types of regulative bills are definitely easier to get through. But yeah, I will say also anything related to increasing taxes generally doesn't go over well. But like for example, this past year we had included a bill that would increase the excise tax to help make affordable housing more doable in terms of getting funding for that. And that didn't, it sounds good in theory, but some legislators didn't agree. They said it probably would be very hard to get it passed. So, yeah, I would say if, there's probably a good balance you can strike with your bills if you want to include a couple bills that are related to, more regulation, and other bills that are maybe a little bit tougher to get through, but still worth, talking through with legislators. It's still good to get their feedback and see, kind of test the waters with certain bills. But yeah, just something to keep in mind. That's a good point, though.
Great. Thanks again. And yeah, as mentioned, if any others also have any questions, certainly feel free to raise your hands as well.
And I will note also, Ella just said in the chat, many climate bills have future economic savings that can be quantified, great for political motivation advocacy. That's also a great point. And I definitely recommend you guys looking into that as well. Sometimes it's not convincing for people, but for some people it is. So, you can see how it goes. But yeah, any other questions, you guys? Trying to look through the chat right now. I think I got through most of them.
Yeah. Also, if we have a few extra minutes on, also think about the doing with these local and how any may done.
Bob, you're cutting out a bit. I didn't really get that.
Okay, is it working now?
Yes, now it is.
Okay, so I was just saying that if Priya is on and we have a few extra minutes, would love if she's able to just briefly speak about the work that we have been doing over at SEAL with advising on local and state level races and how any of you may end up getting engaged in those efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely speak about that. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, perfect. Hi, my name is Shreya Garg. I'm a rising junior at the University of Georgia. And Eliana gave a great talk. I hope that you guys all found that really helpful, and please reach out to her if you have any questions. I'm a part of SEAL. It's the organization that Bob explained earlier, the Social Equity Action Lab, and I run the policy team. If you're interested in getting involved with local and state legislation and local races, then please reach out to me. I have a email skeleton, and we're doing a lot of outreach to see if we can get pre-medical and medical students involved in local races, specifically with healthcare related pieces. So if you're interested in that, please reach out to me and Buff, and I'll put my email in the chat, and just email me, and then we can get you on the SEAL policy team listserv, where you can learn about how to get involved and also other events like this one.
Great. I really appreciate that, Shreya. And I think also there may be a way where you and Eliana are actually able to merge efforts, since in some broader sense, much of the local and state race work actually feeds very, very well into the specific advocacy days events that she has also been hosting. So we should definitely speak more about that based on how much specific interest we have in both this audience as well as the rest of the SEAL and Gen Z groups. We might be able to have these efforts very, very well aligned.
Yeah, thank you so much, both. Yeah, me and Troy will definitely be working together more and merging these efforts. And yeah, if any of you guys are interested in working with us, we're happy to talk through how you could get involved in the local races or with organizing your own advocacy day. And yeah, you have our contact info now, so feel free to reach out. We have a few minutes left. If there's any last minute questions, feel free to join. Okay.
I've also recorded the meeting, so if any of you guys joined a little bit late or want the recording, that will be sent out.
Okay, I just saw a new question. Have you had any instances of advocating for policy changes contested by forms of disinformation from legislators? How do you leverage expertise from physicians or other sources in a way that is sensitive to different policymakers' opinions, yet prioritizes expert sources? Okay, great. I was sure I see you need to hop off in a minute, so I'll answer this really, really quickly. So I will say, being in Massachusetts, I am in a very, very progressive state where I wouldn't say, combating disinformation is necessarily something I'm super worried about. Like, I don't have to convince anyone that climate change is real. I think everybody is sort of, for the most part, on board with addressing the climate crisis. So I can't speak to that as much. But happy to talk more offline, Kennedy, about how maybe we can strategize if that's something that you're running into as a problem. And in terms of leveraging expertise from physicians or other sources, yeah, I think, a lot of these physicians are, they're not, I think the medical field in general, people are, you're supposed to not really worry about politics and you care for people regardless of their politics. And so physicians are in a very unique spot to offer very, almost humanitarian type of perspectives. So I think, and, a lot of physicians are also involved in research as well. And so they can kind of speak to more, evidence-based reasoning as well. And again, just approach all policymakers respectfully and just share, really create the meeting as sort of like an exchange of information rather than sort of like we're trying to sit here and educate you, you know what I mean? So, oh, you're from Georgia and you found it especially challenging. Yeah, I'm happy to talk more about that. I know we're running out of time, but I'll leave it there for now because I know Shreya has to go and she's currently recording the session.
It's
But
okay,
anyway.
no rush. I was just letting you know.
Okay, thank you. But yeah, anyway, I'll leave it there, and Kennedy, we can talk offline about that. Any other super last minute questions? Good. Yes, definitely email us. We're all happy to connect and collaborate. And again, thank you so much for spending an hour of your Saturday with us. Hope this was helpful. We will share the slideshow, share the recording, and look forward to answering any other questions you guys might have.
Thank you so much, Ellie. This was so helpful.
Thanks.
No problem. So glad it was helpful. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Bye.